47, this being the 19th of April 2024. Now, in exactly 10 days from now, that's the 29th of April, it would have marked exactly 1 year since the swearing in and investiture of Francis Omondi Ogolla as the country's Chief of Defense Forces. That will not happen. Yesterday, Francis Ogolla perished alongside 9 other military officers. And this show today is dedicated to the memory of CDF Francis Omondi Ogolla and the 9 officers who perished alongside him. My name is Fred Indimuli. Karibu to TV47.
And my name is Stanley Nyaringita. We continue with the coverage of Francis Ogolla, the CDF, and just taking a look at what to expect as of today. Yesterday, the whole bulletin we told you what happened that day, and today we'll be telling you what the kind of events that you may really expect to see, and even focusing on the papers, not only in Kenya, but also East African papers. Uganda is talking about this story. Tanzania is also talking about this story. So the magnitude of this story, even in East Africa as well as Africa, we'll be telling you all about that as well.
All right, and of course, today marks the first of 3 days of national mourning as declared by President William Ruto yesterday when he made the official announcement of the death of our Chief of Defense Forces, Francis Omondi Ogolla, alongside the other 9 military officers, Brigadier Swale Saidi, Colonel Duncan Keitani, Lieutenant Colonel David Sawe, Major George Benson Magondu, Captain Sora Mohammed, Captain Hilary Litali, Senior Sergeant John Kinyua Mureithi, Sergeant Cliffons Omondi, and Sergeant Rose Nyawera.
Oh, yes. And we'll also be taking a look at, by yesterday, there were quite a number of leaders who had already sent their condolences, not only in Kenya. We'll also be taking a look at who else is sending their condolences, world leaders. And even you as a viewer, you're open to share in your messages. 2047 is our SMS number, TV47KE on Facebook.
And one of those messages of condolence comes from the 4th President of the Republic of Kenya, retired President Uhuru Kenyatta, and he says, "It is with great sadness that I've learned of the tragic passing of General Francis Omondi Ogolla, the Chief of Defense Forces of Kenya. His untimely demise in a helicopter crash at the Kaben-Cheptulel border between Elgeyo Marakwet and West Pokot counties is a significant loss for our nation." He goes on to describe General Ogolla as an accomplished military leader and a devoted patriot who dedicated his life to serving and protecting our beloved country. Now, all the dailies this morning have dedicated the front page to this piece of news, and we'll be looking at all of them. The final salute, that's a big headline on the front page of the Daily Nation. General's tragic last moments, that's a standard. We do have more papers. Yes, final salute, the Daily Nation. The last salute, that's the Star.
On People Daily, death of a general.
Mkuu wa majeshi afariki, habari kuu kwenye ukurasa wa mbele wa Taifa Leo.
Afariki
ajalini.
Yes. On to the next. Just seeing how different papers are talking about this story.
Yes. It also features on the front page, if you could just tilt. Take the photo a bit up. Yes, General Francis Omondi Ogolla. Kenyans begin 3 days of national mourning in honor of the life and military career of the Chief of Defense Forces who died yesterday in a helicopter crash with 9 colleagues. That's a business daily, also featuring this piece of news on the front page.
And still in, we live still in Kenya?
I think we're done with the Kenyan papers.
Yes. Into Uganda now. And
in Uganda, you can see also the biggest image there on the front page is the image of Chief of Defense Forces of Kenya. And the headline reads, Kenya Army Chief General Francis Ogolla dies in chopper crash. So it is still big news in our neighboring countries as well. Even as they talk about other things, they've dedicated at least half the front page for this piece of news. Yes, in Tanzania as well, a mention of the same. Mkuu wa majeshi Kenya afariki kwa ajali ya helikopta. Iko pale chini kwenye ukurasa wa mbele wa gazeti la Mwananchi.
And still on the Citizen as well?
On the top strip of the Citizen, if you could just scroll down the paper. Yes, it actually features there. Kenya Defense Chief killed in helicopter crash. And it is definitely the biggest talking point across the region. Kenya, of course, begins 3 days of national mourning, and we'll be looking at some of the activities that will be happening today. Just before we take a look at the papers, probably you take us through some of the events that were initially lined up for today, but probably will no longer happen.
Most definitely. So first off, today we were expecting the official opening of the Bunge Towers today by President William Ruto. President William Ruto had to cut short his drama festival event and fly to State House yesterday for the briefing. And this particular morning, he was to officially open the Bunge Towers. That will not be happening, as well as the vetting of the Judicial Service Commission judges. It was a whole process, has been happening for quite a long time. There are quite a number of judges who were to be, just vetted. And so that particular process also has been postponed as well. For the Bunge Towers, it has been postponed till next week. And again, today, do expect in various government institutions to see the flags being flown half-mast. This is according to the President, who will also be telling you what to expect in our subsequent bulletins as we continue in the 3 days, not only today, what to expect, what you really need to know about this and how important this news coverage is for you.
All right. Yes, and as you mentioned correctly, during this time of official mourning over the next 3 days, the Kenya flag, the Kenya Defence Forces flag, as well as the East African Community flag shall fly at half-mast in the Republic of Kenya and Kenyan missions abroad. This was declared yesterday by President William Ruto, as he also announced the commencement today of the 3 days of mourning that the nation will observe. So we are officially in a state of mourning. Let's take a look at the dailies now to take a look at how they've covered this piece of news. Final salute is a big headline on the front page of the Daily Nation this Friday. General Francis Ogolla was born in 1962, and he was to turn 62 years, interestingly coinciding with his age, the age of retirement from his current position. He passed on at the age of 61 years. And we have an image there on the front page of the Daily Nation in full salute in his official military attire as a chief of defense forces. He has been an Air Force officer since 1985. And they talk of tragedy. President William Ruto declares 3 days of national mourning after Chief of Defense Forces Francis Ogolla dies in a helicopter crash that also claimed the lives of 9 others. Now, this story has been extensively covered. It is the biggest news today. It's been extensively covered on pages 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So the first 6 pages of this newspaper have been dedicated to nothing else but different headlines with regard to this story. On page 2, Francis Ogolla, general who had big dreams for the KDF. And they talk about the key years in General Ogolla's career, 62 being the age of the general upon his death. 1984 is when Ogolla joined the military.
On 24th of April.
Yes.
Page 4, they call him an April man.
Yes. Oh, so he was born in April, or he joined the military in April.
Joined the military in April.
And he was appointed CDF and was sworn into office in April as well.
Yes.
And then his death, unfortunately, comes in the same month of April. 1985 is the year he was commissioned second lieutenant. In 2006, that's a year, a military plane with a high-powered, this is page 3 of the Daily Nation. It just given us a chronology of events in General Ogolla's career, the life and times. In 2006, that's a year, military plane with a high-powered peace delegation crashed in Marsabit County, killing 14 people. That's just a different event, probably talking about other tragedies related to the military. In 1992, the year Ogolla flew to Yugoslavia as an observer and military information officer, and he returned home the following year. In 1994, Ogolla became chairman of the Military Christian Fellowship. In 2018, Ogolla was made head of the Kenya Air Force. In 2022, that's the last time the country held a general election, and 2023, the year Ogolla became a 4-star general and chief of defense forces of the Republic of Kenya. We do have quite a number of photos accompanying this story, and it is a big story covering 2 pages. It's a whole spread across pages 2 and 3 of the Daily Nation. On page 4 now, they talk about the April month stands out in Ogolla's military life. Yes, as we mentioned, General Francis Ogolla had his destiny tied to April. He joined the KDF on April 24th, 1984. He was appointed Chief of Defense Forces on April 28th, 2023, and his death struck on April 17th, 2024. The very last story on this piece of news, Ruto mourns valiant patriotic soldiers. And yes, President William Ruto paid tribute to the CDF who perished alongside the 9 other officers who were in that fateful chopper yesterday.
Page 6 just describing what happened on that day. Saying at around 1 p.m. yesterday, 3 helicopters landed at Chiptulal Boys Secondary School in West Pokot County. Several people alighted from the choppers and were received by the Pokot Central Deputy. There's on page 6 of Daily Nation, saying County Commissioner Naftali Korir, area chiefs and other administrators, and just what really transpired on that day. That is on page 6.
Right, that's the Daily Nation coverage of this piece of news.
Right. On the Standard, somewhat of a similar headline, but they chose different pictures on the same. The coverage is on pages 2, 3, 4, and 5. And they say, General's tragic last moments. The photo of the general, as well as a picture of the crash scene, just below there. The bottom of the Bell military helicopter at Kaben in Elgeyo Marakwet yesterday. So the accident killed General Francis Ogolla alongside 9 officers and servicemen and a woman. There were only 2 survivors. And there's a quote there by the president saying the demise of General Ogolla is a painful loss to me, and certainly the sorrow we all feel about his passing is shared by all the people of Kenya, and especially the KDF fraternity. A distinguished 4-star general has fallen in the course of duty and service to the country. And that is the only story focused on the front page of the Standard. And getting into the insert is what we'll be telling you, and what in-depth coverage of the same. Chronology. On page 3, they have the Bell UHI Iroquois, also known as Huey. And just telling you all you need to know about that military utility chopper that they were on board. Saying year it took first flight in 1956, carrying 13 passengers and a gross weight of capacity 4,309 kilograms. Is on page 3 of the Standard. Well, this coverage continues. Just saying on page 4, puzzle of 5 helicopter crashes in 12 months. Military top shots likely to succeed Ogolla. An interesting twist again on the coverage. Mm-hmm. Yes, and I mean, even yesterday, as Victor Muyakane was just talking to a number of leaders, including Speaker of the Senate, Amason Kingi, just saying we should really let the country mourn first before we even start to speculate and all that.
Oh yes, I'm sure there are many questions about who will take over, but probably it's not the time to discuss that piece of development. And yes, of course, the focus right now is in the mourning and commiserating with the families, the entire Kenya Defence Forces fraternity. The whole nation as a whole. It is not the time probably. I'm sure behind the scenes they're working on what will happen next. And all these things will reveal themselves in due course. And yes, but that story on page 5 of the Standard talks about what to expect in as far as progression of the military leadership is concerned.
Oh, yes.
So that's the Standard and its coverage of that piece of news. You could take a look at the People Daily as well, and it makes mention of this, the Business Daily rather. It makes mention of this transition on the front page as well, dedicating some space, at least quarter of the page or the front page of the Business Daily, dedicated to this piece of news at the bottom there. General Francis Ogolla. Kenyans begin 3 days of national mourning in honor of the life and military career of the Chief of Defense Forces, who died yesterday in a helicopter crash with 9 colleagues. And you know, something interesting is that this is the very first time we're having the head of military in Kenya dying in office. We've had about 11 of them so far, from 1966 to now. And most of them, all of them have actually retired. And it's only the first 3 who have died so far. All the rest are still alive. About 7 of them are living their life in retirement. And now the very latest one, Francis Ogolla, dies in office. And we've seen so many state funerals for presidents or retired presidents in Kenya.
Yes.
Yes, Jomo Kenyatta, of course, died in office in 1978. And there was a lot of elaborate military protocol procedures, yes, and other activities surrounding that funeral. Of course, very different, or at least slightly different from what we saw with the funeral, state funeral or military activities around the death of Daniel Moi and Mwai Kibaki sometime in 2022. So it would be interesting to see what will happen now that we have a sitting Chief of Defense Forces passing on while in office. And we do anticipate a lot of military activities there. The Business Daily has also dedicated some more information on page 3 of the Business Daily, but they simply talk about the events of yesterday, that crash that took place somewhere along the border of West Pokot and Elgeyo Marakwet, and the losses that this nation suffered there. All right, and that's the Business Daily. Time for us to take a look at other dailies as well.
Right. Let me cross over to my screen and take a look at People Daily. More coverage on the same, pages 3 and 4. They have about, 2 stories on the same, on that paper. But the biggest, death of a general in the line of duty, and they say Kenyans thrown into mourning following the death of a Chief of Defense Forces alongside other gallant officers in plane crash, while leading his team to restore peace in banditry-hit North Rift. Is that quote again by President William Ruto saying, "A distinguished 4-star general has fallen in the course of duty and in the service of the country. I convey my deepest condolences to all families that are grieving this untimely loss and our mourning nation as well." We can definitely take a look at how People Daily has also focused and the new stories that it also has on the same. On on page 2, they have other bits there, but on page 3, there you have it. They go with a different analyzation of the same and analysis of the same. They say powerful individuals who help in appointment of CDF, matters that you really want to know. So first off, Cabinet Secretary Defense, Aden Duale, the Deputy President, Rigathi Gachagua, NIS Director, Nuruddin Haji, as well as Police Inspector General, that is Japheth Kome, Attorney General Justice Justin Muturi, beg your pardon, as well as Prime Cabinet Secretary Musalia Mudavadi.
Members of the National Security Council. That also includes the President and the Chief of Defense Forces. So Francis Ogolla was actually part of this team, the National Security Council, that had to sit yesterday before the President could actually issue that official statement and confirming the death of the CDF.
Oh, yes. They also say nation mourns a gallant general. They have A photo there of the bodies of Kenya Defence Forces officers involved in the helicopter crash arriving at Embakasi Air Base in Nairobi yesterday night, and we had live pictures of the same and how that transpired, and also we'll also be seeing what will be happening on the same as well. Final one on page 4. They say the crash site that claimed the life of head of defense forces is a banditry hotspot. I'm just trying to give more analysis on this story and how Ruto gave Ogolla CTF post as allies opposed. Oh yes.
And I think such analysis will continue, especially in the coming week, probably even after the official mourning period. People will. There's a lot people have been discussing on social media that, of course, many people are reluctant to touch on for now. And most of this will happen, I think, after the official mourning period. People will discuss such topics like how Ruto gave CDF post to Ogolla while others opposed it. Why did they oppose it? I'll be looking at that.
And just even picking that soundbite by President William Ruto during the joint media interview,
which I feel is being
twisted
out of context, because you should allow the statement to start from the beginning and go to the logical conclusion for you to understand the contextual base of it. But anyway, there's so many discussions, and of course the difference between social media and what we do here is between night and day, so we cannot touch on some of these discussions.
That is the People Daily for you on the front page. To the next paper.
Gazeti la Taifa Leo pia linagusia habari hii, ndio habari kuu pale kwenye ukurasa wa mbele. Mkuu wa majeshi afariki ajalini. Jenerali Ogolla akiwa na miaka 62 na maafisa wengine 9 waaga dunia kwenye ajali ya ndege eneo la Sindar, Elgeyo Marakwet, na kuna picha pale ya Jenerali Francis Omondi Ogolla. Habari zaidi, habari kamili kwenye ukurasa wa pili wa gazeti hili, lakini kwenye ukurasa wa mbele hii tu ndio habari ambayo imepewa kipaumbele. Tuangazie gazeti la Star.
Sema the last salute, umeweka picha ya General Ogolla, an archive photo of him saluting. And they say Chief of Defense Forces and 8 senior military officers killed in Marakwet plane crash. They have an extensive coverage from pages 4, 5, 6, and 7 as well. And
incidentally, that's the same photo used by the Daily Nation on the front page with the title Final Salute. So the last salute and the same photo, the Star and the Daily Nation are in tandem.
And well, that's seemingly
it's the only story of the
only Well, others are on their inside pull out.
This is one way of showing honor, even because I feel, and this is something that a lot of media houses or people watching us don't understand. When you read the newspaper and you see it's only one story that features on the front page, that is just a way of ensuring that you focus on nothing else. It is a way of these journalists, these newspapers, just showing their honor and respect for the person who's being mourned. And in this case, a lot of the dailies have done that. The Standard, there's nothing else. Actually, the image of the fallen general, sorry for that,
from top to bottom,
actually extends to the very top. If you look, it even touches on the title of the daily, the Standard, and just putting that imposing image on the front page is a way to honor this individual, and nothing else features on the front page.
Right, and that is okay to also take a look at the international, or rather the regional papers, and we do start with the Daily Monitor. They also mention this, well, as much as they have their own local and country stories, but they say Kenya Army Chief General Francis Ogolla dies in a chopper crash. Just highlighting more on that, have that coverage on page 6.
Okay, and you see they've dedicated a whole half page of a paper in Uganda to talk about news from Kenya. Also their own way of honoring this fallen general. Yes, so it's big news. I know at least in Tanzania, the President Samia Suluhu Hassan was quick to send a message of condolence, and if you may allow me this, I can just read it. On her Twitter handle, nimepokea kwa masikitiko makubwa taarifa ya kifo cha mkuu wa majeshi ya ulinzi ya Jamhuri ya Kenya, Jenerali Francis Omondi Ogolla, na wanajeshi wengine 9 katika ajali ya helikopta iliyotokea leo katika kaunti ya Elgeyo Marakwet. Natuma salamu za pole kwa Rais na Amiri Jeshi Mkuu wa Majeshi ya Ulinzi ya Kenya, Mheshimiwa William Ruto, wananchi wote wa Kenya, familia, ndugu, jamaa na marafiki wa wote waliopoteza jamaa zao katika ajali hiyo. Poleni sana. Mwenyezi Mungu azilaze roho za ndugu zetu kwa mahali pema peponi. Amina. That's a message from the President of Tanzania, Samia Suluhu Hassan, who's currently, I think, on a state visit to Turkey.
All right.
Yes.
The new vision in Uganda doesn't make a highlight on the same, but in Tanzania, as you say, Mwananchi, gazeti la Mwananchi, pale katikati, mkuu wa majeshi Kenya afariki kwa ajali ya helikopta. Sema mkuu wa majeshi wa Kenya, Jenerali Francis Ogolla, amefariki dunia kwa ajali ya helikopta iliyotokea jana jioni. And also the Citizen, on the very top strip.
Oh yes, kwenye gazeti la Citizen, let me just get it. The very top strip, they make mention of this. Kenya Defense Chief killed in helicopter crash. The story on the inside pages can be found on page 4 of this daily in Tanzania. Yes, in Tanzania, at least the top 2 newspapers have made mention of this.
And well, I believe even for the regions, they are waiting to see who, how all this military protocol will be going, because even this news really affects them largely. Yes. And
there's an interesting video I've seen online of a young Francis Ogolla. Yes. Do we have that? Yes, I think we can play that video now. I think he was in training in his earlier days. And if you look at him, he looks a very excited young military officer, yes, just going through the rigors of training as an Air Force officer. Go ahead and play the video. I'm sure many people have probably come across it on social media. And it was one of those light moments. Yes.
What are you going to fly, Francis? I'm going on a foam ride.
No, they didn't have tractor.
In a few more rides, I'll be out.
This guy got warmed up, so. Go this.
Here's my package. Dodge missiles and shit back there.
That's a lot of trouble. You watch Steve Ritchie.
Where are we going?
Steve Ritchie.
Actually, Francis is a star here, but we can have some close
Yeah,
time.
Play him a little more, Francis.
The baby got sound? You bet. What are you doing, Francis?
Francis will soon be
swimming pool.
Francis will soon be Top Gun of Kenya.
Top Gun.
Top Gun of Kenya.
Yes, sir. Mine is Buffalo. I'm flying all this formation. I'm going to fly Buffalo very slowly.
Buffalo?
Yes, and they called him there the Top Gun of Kenya. And he must have been in training, because I'm looking at his profile and his career in the military. And they talk about him being born in 1962 in Siaya County and enlisting in the KDF as an officer cadet in 1984, where he was commissioned as a second lieutenant on 3rd of May 1985, upon which he was posted to the Moi Air Base, where he later trained as a pilot. This is back in 1985. Now, during his career in the Kenya Defense Forces, General Ogolla held several command, staff, and instructional appointments. In command, he was a commanding officer, Laikipia Air Base Tactical Flight Wing in 2007. He was also base commander, Laikipia Air Base from 2008 to 2014. Upon promotion to brigadier on April 10th, 2012, another April date, he was appointed the Deputy Air Force Commander and later on promoted to Major General on 13th July 2018 and appointed Commander, Kenya Air Force. On 23rd July 2021, he was also promoted to the rank of Lieutenant General and appointed the Vice Chief of Defense Forces, a position he held until 28th of April last year, when he was promoted to the rank of General and appointed Chief of Defense Forces. Now, due to his dedication to service, the late General Francis Ogolla was awarded several medals, among them the Moran of the Golden Heart, MGH, Elder of the Burning Spear, Head of State Commendation, among others. Now, General Francis Omondi Ogolla leaves behind a widow, Eileen Kathambi Ogolla, and 2 children, Lona Achieng Omondi and Joel Rabuku Omondi Ogolla. He also leaves behind 1 daughter-in-law, Modoni Njenga Mwaura, and a grandson by the name Taji Barara. The life and times of Francis Omondi Ogolla, the Chief of Defense Forces of Kenya, who perished in that fateful helicopter crash yesterday to the border between Elgeyo Marakwet and West Pokot County. And this is our special coverage of events surrounding the death of the CDF, Francis Ogolla, and 9 others who perished in that fateful crash as we begin the 3 days of national mourning. All right, we'll be having guests in studio to discuss this and what to expect in the coming days. Do stand by for that. For now, we take a break. Morning Cafe will continue shortly. General Francis Omondi Ogolla, whose passing has left a profound impact. Ogolla's demise occurred tragically in a helicopter accident in Kaben, Marakwet East, yesterday. He was appointed as a new Chief of Defense Forces during military reshuffle in April last year. Ogolla succeeded General Robert Kibochi, who retired upon reaching the mandatory age of 62. President William Ruto confirmed the death of CDF Francis Ogolla, and now let's play back what the president had to say yesterday evening.
Bunge la kitaifa tumeweza pia kumwona
Today, at 2:20 p.m., our nation suffered a tragic air accident in Sindar area, Keben location, Tort Division in Elgeyo Marakwet County. I am deeply saddened to announce the passing on of General Francis Omondi Ogolla, the Chief of the Kenya Defense Forces. Together with him in the crash were 11 other gallant military personnel, 9 who also passed on with him, and 2 survivors. The gallant military personnel who passed on with General Ogolla are Brigadier Swale Saidi, Colonel Duncan Keitany, Lieutenant Colonel David Sawe, Major George Benson Magondu, who was also the pilot, Captain Sora Mohammed, Captain Hilary Litali, Senior Sergeant John Kinywa Mureithi, Sergeant Cliffons Omondi, and Sergeant Rose Nyawira. The Chief of Defense Forces on board the Kenya Air Force Hiwi helicopter had left Nairobi this morning to visit troops deployed in the North Rift under the Operation Maliza Uhalifu, and to also inspect the ongoing school renovation works in the following schools: Chesitet Primary School, Cheptulel High School, Chepoton Primary School, Ksa Primary School, and Saplimoi Primary School. As part of his working tour, the CDF had been briefed on the security situation by a multi-agency team stationed at Chesitet in Baringo County, after which he proceeded to the Kainuk Forward Operating Base in the Turkana County, where he addressed troops, commending them for their resilience and operational success. The Chief of Defense Forces and his entourage departed from Kainuk to Chesegon in West Pokot County, where he launched the rehabilitation of Cheptulel Boys High School. He then departed Chesegon for the Recruits Training School in Wasingishu County, where he was scheduled to inspect construction facilities at the institution. Unfortunately, the aircraft crashed shortly after takeoff. This is a very sad moment, a moment of great sadness. For me, as the Commander-in-Chief of the Kenya Defense Forces, it is a tragic moment for the Kenya Defense Forces fraternity and it is a most unfortunate day for the nation at large. Our motherland has lost one of her most valiant generals. We have also lost gallant officers, servicemen, and women. The demise of General Ogolla is a painful loss to me, and certainly the sorrow we all feel about this passing on is shared by all of the people of Kenya, and most especially the KDF fraternity. A distinguished four-star general has fallen in the course of duty and in the service of country. I convey my deepest condolences to all families that are grieving this untimely loss and our mourning nation as well. May the Almighty God rest their souls in peace and grant their families fortitude at this time of very deep sorrow. I also wish quick recovery to the two injured soldiers in this accident who are now in hospital. The Kenya Air Force has constituted and dispatched an air investigation team to establish the cause of the air crash. In honor of the life and the distinguished military career of the fallen general who lost his life not just while in office, but in active military duty, the nation will observe a period of 3 days of mourning commencing tomorrow, the 19th of April, 2024. During this time of national mourning, the Kenya flag, the Kenya Defense Forces flag, the East African Community flag, and flags of all formations of the military shall fly at half-mast in the Republic of Kenya and in Kenya missions abroad. Poleni sana.
Now, Kenya Defense Forces helicopter crashed yesterday, claiming the lives of several officers. The tragic incident occurred when the chopper they were aboard crashed in Tot, Marakwet East. Among those casualties was Chief of Defense Forces General Francis Ogolla, alongside 9 other officials. Brigadier Swale Saidi, Colonel Duncan Keitani, Lieutenant Colonel David Sawe, Major George Benson Magondu, who was also the pilot, Captain Sora Mohammed, Captain Hilary Litali, Senior Sergeant John Kenywa Mureithi, Sergeant Cliffons Omondi, and Sergeant Rose Nyawera. Following the loss, President William Ruto has declared 3 days of national mourning, beginning today. Now, General Ogolla assumed the role of Chief of Defense Forces in April last year, succeeding General Robert Kibochi, who retired upon reaching the mandatory age of 62. Prior to his appointment, General Ogolla served as a Vice Chief of the Defense Forces. His education background includes a graduation from École Militaire de Paris and the National Defense College of Kenya. He holds a diploma in International Studies and Military Science from Egerton University, a Bachelor of Arts in Political Science and Conflict and Peace Studies, first-class honors, and a Master of Arts in International Studies from the University of Nairobi. Our reporter Lennox Sengre has prepared the following profile for the late CDF.
I, General Francis Ogolla.
On April 28th in the year 2023, President William Ruto promoted Lieutenant General Francis Ogolla to a full general and appointed him the new Chief of Defense Forces.
Let me take this opportunity again to congratulate our new CDF, General Ogolla.
Since then, General Ogolla has served as the principal military advisor to the President and the Cabinet.
That I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to the Republic of Kenya and to the President as the Commander-in-Chief of the Kenya Defense Forces. That I will obey, preserve, protect, and defend this Constitution of Kenya.
Ogolla joined the military on April 24, 1984 and was commissioned as a second lieutenant on May 6, 1985.
And that I will protect and uphold the sovereignty, integrity, and dignity of the people of Kenya.
He trained as a fighter pilot with the United States Air Force and is also a competent instructor pilot. In addition, he trained in other fields including imagery, intelligence, counterterrorism, and accident investigation. Lieutenant General Ogolla, who was a graduate of École Militaire in Paris and a National Defense College of Kenya. He holds a diploma both in International Studies and a Military Science from Egerton University, a Bachelor of Arts in Political Science, Armed Conflict and Peace Studies, where he scored a first-class honors, and Masters of Arts in International Studies from the University of Nairobi. He was promoted to the rank of Major General and appointed the Commander of Kenya Air Force on July 15, 2018. Previously, he held various appointments in training, command, and staff, including Deputy Commander, Kenya Air Force, Base Commander, Laikipia Air Base, Commanding Officer of Tactical Fighter Wing, Chief Flying Instructor at Kenya Air Force Flying Training School, and Operations Desk Officer at Kenya Air Force Headquarters. He also served in Yugoslavia as an observer and military information officer from 1992 to 1993, as chairman of Military Christian Fellowship from 1994 to 2004, and co-chair of Association of African Air Chiefs between 2018-2019. General Ogolla was married to Aileen and blessed with 2 children and 1 grandchild. Lieutenant General Ogolla was an ardent reader and golf enthusiast. In 2010, he was inducted into the National Defense College Hall of Fame and hailed as a formidable achiever for initiating several major modernization programs aimed at transforming the Kenya Air Force into a modern force that is competitive with other modern air forces all over the world. In addition, he is said to have transformed the Kenya Air Force through reorganization posture, modernization programs, and welfare systems. Ogolla, who was named the new Chief of Defense Forces in the changes in military in April 2023, took over from General Robert Kibochi, who departed after attaining the mandatory exit age of 62. Before the appointment, General Ogolla was the Vice Chief of the Defense Forces. In his many achievements and accolades, he served as an inspiration to aspiring military personnel and a testament to the importance of continuous learning and a self-improvement. When a soldier wears his uniform, it is to signify his willingness to perform in his duties undeterred. The pride of any military officer or serviceman is to serve his country with distinction, honor, and fidelity. A famous quote in military circles goes, "No man is a man until he becomes a soldier." Lennox Sengre for TV 47.
And messages of condolence continue pouring in from various quarters and a number of leaders here. And one of those is Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua, who posted on his social media the following message. It was only yesterday afternoon, and this message was posted yesterday. It was only yesterday afternoon that General Ogolla and I had a really hearty conversation at the Bomas of Kenya during the Wage Bill Conference. General Ogolla was a very vibrant, pleasant, and joyous person with a distinct and admirable demeanor. He served our nation with sheer determination and unparalleled distinction. We've lost a great patriot who gave his best in protecting our country. May God grant the family of General Ogolla and the other families which lost their loved ones in this tragic accident, as well as the KDF fraternity and the nation, the strength to bear this loss. Rest well, General. Another message here from the Prime Cabinet Secretary, who's also in charge of Foreign Affairs, Musalia Mudavadi. Through his Twitter handle, he says, "It is with immense sorrow that I join the nation and the KDF fraternity in mourning the loss of General Francis Ogolla, the Chief of the Defense Forces, and 9 other valiant soldiers who lost their lives in a helicopter crash while serving their country. Their unwavering dedication and selfless service to our nation will forever be etched in our memories. During this difficult time, my heartfelt condolences go out to their bereaved families, the entire military fraternity, their Commander-in-Chief, His Excellency President William Ruto, and all Kenyans. May their souls find eternal peace." Cabinet Secretary in charge of Defense, Honorable Aden Duale. This is a message from him. "With profound sorrow, we share the passing of General Francis Ogolla, a decorated and distinguished Kenya Air Force officer who served our country for 40 years, culminating in his appointment as Chief of Defense Forces. As a Cabinet Secretary in the Ministry of Defense, I had the privilege of working closely with General Ogolla, both as a Vice and Chief of Defense Forces. He was to me a brother first, then a friend, colleague, and lastly, a general and a member of the Defense Council. His legacy will forever be cherished in our hearts and in our nation's history. Our thoughts and prayers are with his family and those of the other officers in the ill-fated flight. Rest in peace, General." Chair of the Council of Governors, Anne Waiguru. This is a message she sent. "What a shocking and severe loss for Kenya as we mourn the death of Kenya's Chief of Defense Forces, General Francis Ogolla, and his colleagues, gallant servicemen and women today. Kenya remains indebted to you for your decades of service. May our Heavenly Father comfort your families, your loved ones, and your colleagues at this impossible, difficult time." The Honorable Mithika Linturi, Cabinet Secretary for Interior and Coordination of National Government. He says, a shining example of unwavering dedication, profound patriotism, and a beacon, or rather, this is Mithika Linturi, the CS for Agriculture, sorry. I'd confused the name with that of Professor Kithure Kindiki. This is Honorable Mithika Linturi, Cabinet Secretary for Agriculture, and he says, "A shining example of unwavering dedication, profound patriotism, and a beacon of peace for Kenya. Your legacy will endure eternally. Rest peacefully, CDF General Francis Ogolla, as you remain forever in our hearts." And we'll continue looking at some of these messages from different leaders in different quarters as they continue to commiserate with the rest of Kenyans. And following the declaration of 3 days of national mourning, a number of things have changed. A number of events that were to take place today have been postponed, key among them interviews for judges of the High Court by the Judicial Service Commission. That process has now been postponed. It was to take place today. It will continue on Monday, the 22nd of April. The other key event that was to take place today was the commissioning and official opening of the Bunge Towers, the new building, the 28-story building that members of parliament were to move to. President William Ruto was to officiate at that event. That has now been postponed and will take place on Thursday next week. That's the 25th of April. A number of other events have been postponed, and we will continue bringing you more details of the same. Now, joining me in studio now is Eric Mungai, political analyst. And we do have Farah Maalim, MP, Dadaab, also on the line for this discussion. And Eric, as we look at the dailies today, final salute on the Daily Nation, General's tragic last moments on the Standard, and it is definitely a moment of shock and sorrow for Kenyans. Just before we engage Eric, allow me to engage Bwana Farah Maalim, MP Dadaab. A very good morning to you, Bwana Maalim, and I want to allow you first to commiserate with the rest of Kenyans by giving us your message of condolences. Go ahead.
Well, we have been faced with a tragedy of incalculable proportions. And my condolences to the families of the deceased, starting with our celebrated and actually a good friend of mine, General Ogolla, as well as all the other officers who perished with him in this accident. Many people in the country did not have a good sleep last night. We never had. I more or less had a nightmare myself, because I knew the general, and the general was just too good. And so we have lost an officer who died literally in the line of action, because he was out there doing what he loved to do most. But then it's a tragedy, and you can't commiserate enough. You just have to say, we will live with this for the rest of our lives, and this will always be a shock that we very few shocks like that we have experienced in this country's independent history. Very few, I can tell you. It's just a handful.
Yes.
So that goes for my condolences and my feeling about this tragedy.
And you say correctly that we've not experienced many such incidences in Kenya. Yes, over the last 2-3 years, we've gotten to witness the funeral of retired presidents. And when it comes to the chiefs of our military, most of them are retired. This is the first time in a very long time that we're talking about a sitting chief of military passing on. Just paint a picture of how heavy this is for the country.
Yeah, this is. I was last night, talking with my family, members of my family, and we were going through. Other than General Mulinge and General Ndolo, every other celebrated military chief we had in this country is alive. General Mohammed, who was the CGS Chief of General Staff at that time, is alive and very well. I visit him often. And I always, pull on his experience and wisdom, which essentially one has to put it in writing right now. And he was followed by General Tonje, equally celebrated officer who came up with the Tonje rules. He's still around. He's alive, thank God. And then he was followed by Kibwana, and then Mwadeze, and then Karangi, and then all the way to Kibochi we had the other day. These are officers we treasure. This was the youngest officer, and literally the best educated. I mean, he was in a class of his own, and drew on the wisdom of the old officers, because he worked with General Mohammed. He worked with all those people I mentioned right now, and he literally was at their feet, picking up all the good ideas, because the wisdom of those old officers who had never gone to school, but who were blessed by God, was something that one has got. So he had breathed the both, and it's a tragedy. It's a tragedy that we will worry about for a very long time to come, and that's the point, because you look at this side. You remember J.M. Kariuki, who died in circumstances that essentially was the foul play. And then the late Bonaya Godana, our celebrated Minister for Foreign Affairs, and intellectual and extremely high integrity. And then we have had a few officers like dignitaries in country who died. You see, when a president who was in his 90s passes on, or in his late 80s passes on, but generally you mourn, yes, because you look at the history. And you celebrate the history and the good. But then it's more or less expected that this man was at the prime of his life. And he had a lot more to contribute to the country. These other ones were all retired.
And you say
so these are the kind of things that makes the difference. And it's not that we're not in a shock when Kenyatta died or when Moi died or when Kibaki died. No, we were in a shock, yes, but it's more or less expected at that age. And they had given everything they had to give. And there was very little left of them to give to the country. But this man had everything left to give to the country, just like the late Dr. Ogolla, and a few others like that, yes.
And you mentioned that you've had an opportunity to interact with a gentleman, and many people who are talking about it, they're talking about his humility, and the balance between humility and holding such power as a head of military. Can you talk about that?
The guy, the fella was down to earth. He was exceptional. I interacted with him many times. And you can imagine, I'm not, sometimes you are not in the right side of the political divide. But he looked at this as a country. He did not look at this man, this member of parliament is from UDA or from this side or the other side. No, he looked at you as a Kenyan and would sit down with you. I remember we sat in a place, just the two of us, for 3 hours on an afternoon, just talking about how we should deal with the issue of the insecurity in the north and the scourge of Al-Shabaab. And I literally had a notebook with him and took everything, and acted on some of them immediately. So the man was in a class of his own. The man was in a class of his own. Let me tell you, I've never been that much for a very long time touched since the late Dr. Ogolla. And it's a bit sad, these things happen, but we can only celebrate his life, his short life. As far as I'm concerned, he had another 20 years to contribute to this country at least.
Okay, definitely. Finally, the country is in a state of national mourning. The president declared 3 days of national mourning. And this is a very unique event. I don't know if you have any understanding of what the country should expect in the coming days, probably as a final comment.
Well, let me tell you, when you're so exceptional that you are one among everybody else, then of course exceptional things out of the ordinary happen. This man was on the other side of it, was believed to be on the other side of the divide in the last election. But our president looked at him and all the wisdom he drew from other officers and everybody else, and he was told, look, this man is the right man for the job. And he gave it to him. Give credit also to the president for having appointed Ogolla as the chief of the Kenya Defense Forces when every indication was that he was going to appoint somebody else because of political expedience. No, he did a national expedience. He looked at the nation and decided, look, this is in the interest of the nation. So I think we will mourn. We have to put off all the events that were scheduled for this week and this Friday and the weekend and maybe early next week. The flag has got to go half-mast as usual for 3 days, I think. I don't know if it's going to be more than that. And then that's the normal, I think. And then we will come together and reflect on this and see how the country can use this tragedy also to bring the country closer together. These are the kind of things we have to all look at. Okay. And I have a feeling that everybody, every senior leader, everybody has got to go down to where the late our general is going to be put to rest and be there with the family and literally this country has got to use this opportunity also. It's a tragedy, it's a serious tragedy.
Okay.
But in expressing our sadness, we will have to go together, all of us. This country has to come together. This country has to come together and come together in a big way.
Well, thank you so much.
That we've lost our son, our soldier par excellence. But then the country will definitely continue, and we need to come together. It's a tragedy that will pain us for a long time to come.
Okay, thank you for that. And allow me now to engage my guest in studio, Eric Mungai. We'll come back to you, Bona Faramaalim, in a short while. Eric, even as a young Kenyan, we are at an age where the military now had just begun to open up. And probably we start with you commiserating with the families that have lost their loved ones before we discuss anything else.
Thank you, Fred, and good morning to the viewers. It's indeed a sad morning. I want to join other Kenyans in commiserating. We find ourselves in a situation that is unprecedented, so to speak. And I want to join my fellow countrymen in just celebrating the life of a departed hero. The Daily Nation captures it well, the final salute, for a man who, in essence, gave his whole life to the military and to serving the Kenyan nation. And you know, before the death occurred, he was actually on a mission to inspect some of the schools, courtesy of the program that the government is undertaking, Operation Maliza Uhalifu. And you can see this was a man that was devoted to the country. This was a man who led from the front. And definitely, as a young person, this is a man you want to look up to. Because you realize, as we grow up and as we move along our careers, sometimes you need markers and guidance of people who have been there, people who have followed the correct path. Many people who knew him say he was not only a humble man, but he was a man of steel. When he made a decision, he made a decision. But he's a man who was able to incorporate everyone. And given the fact that he has grown through the ranks in the military career, he is a man to be admired. And as I must say on behalf of young Kenyans, we have lost a role model, someone we can look up to. And even for those who are joining the military now, they have a marker and they have a guide on how things should be done, on how to lead from the front, because that's the calling of a general. You lead from the front, you lead with distinction, you lead with honor, and also with fidelity. So I want to join the rest of the Kenyans in observing this moment. Definitely unprecedented, unexpected, a shock to all of us, but nevertheless, it is what it is. And I must say that the man did an excellent job, a job worth emulating. Okay.
And talking about young Kenyans, we earlier were watching this video that surfaced online, and if my director could help me with this, of a young Francis Ogolla going through training at a very tender age. And to think about a career that has spanned over around 40 years today, actually, because he joined the military in 1984. It is exactly 40 years later. And he joined in April, actually. The fact that he rose from a very junior officer to actually the helm of the military, that is something that many young people probably do not have the resilience to do. People are looking for quick wins. And just looking at the career of this gentleman, even as we watch this video of the young Air Force cadets just going through the military, you can see his humility there and his training with foreign officers, I think somewhere in the US. And many young people could learn a lot from the life and times of General Ogolla.
Fred, for a man born in 1962, that was just 1 year before we achieved our independence. And for a man emanating from a county of Siaya, that time that must have been the Nyanza, I think that must have been the Nyanza province. When you look at him getting to join the military in 1984, and I must say that at 1984, there are some people that were not born. I would not say including myself.
Are you sure you were born in 1984? I highly doubt.
But rising through the ranks to, becoming a second lieutenant, joining the Air Force, becoming the commanding officer in Laikipia Air Base, and becoming the base commander. The man really has grown through the ranks. Yeah. And most of us as young people, either we are looking for get-rich-quick scheme, or we want to move through the ladder very quickly, or we keep on changing careers because either we are bored or we are looking for adventure. But if you look at the consistency of this man, for 60 years, having climbed through the ranks, and what, there's one thing I learned from the general. When you put in the consistency and the hard work, even the universe conspires to make sure that you succeed. In what manner? Remember, when the Tonje rules came into effect, so to speak, he was just going through his career. But time and chance happened to place you in a manner where at that particular time, when your predecessor retires, then it is time for the Air Force to take over. And because
automatic,
and because you've had an illustrious career, then it becomes sort of automatic that you're the next guard to take over as a result of your consistency. And I think there is a lot that we can learn from that, especially for us as young people. And even the leaders who are in this country have a lot to learn from Ogolla himself. If you listen to the accolades that people are giving him, his colleagues, people who have interacted with him, like the MP Honorable Farah Maalim, when you look at the tributes given by the president, the deputy president, the CS for defense, you can really tell that this was a man who was up to something. He really knew what he was doing. And it behooves us who are young and who want to get to those levels in our careers, and even those who are in the military, that there is reward for consistency and diligence. Because most of the times we pick up role models who appear to shine very brightly and very quickly.
From nowhere.
From nowhere. But the reality is that most of those people do not actually get very far. But when you look at a man consistently for 60 years, he has been there, he has done that, and he was due to retire. And when you see a man like that, when he's even due to retire, and he's on the ground at the forefront, leading his forces to guard the lives of Kenyans and the property of Kenyans, then that's a man to admire. There is something in that man that we must learn from.
Yes, and it's interesting that you draw comparisons with the kind of culture that the Gen Zs and the younger generation are adopting now. And it is in sharp contrast with the military traditions. And there's a lot that you can learn from the military. If you look at the officers, even General Tonje, interestingly, curiously, someone did an interview of General Tonje, who's credited with so many of these transitions in military. And he still talks very positively about his time at the military. This is a kind of discipline that many Kenyans would aspire to. I know in other nations, military service is almost compulsory. But do you think, watching these generals, some of them retired, people like Francis Ogolla, who unfortunately died in office, that probably eventually Kenyans should go that way? I know there's been mention about going the NYS paramilitary way, but in other nations, like Israel and Russia, service through the military is compulsory. Do you think it's a way it could possibly help changing our culture as a nation?
I agree. As a nation, we have a culture that is not necessarily worth emulating, for the reasons that we live now in a system where we tend to emulate the wrong things, the wrong people, anything that would appear like it would give you shortcuts to glory or to fame or to wealth. That is what we seem to idealize. But I would say that different countries conscript young men into the army and young women for that matter for different reasons. When you look at a state like Israel, they do so for self-defense because of the neighbors that they live with and the conflicts that they've had historically over time. We have countries, of course, like Russia. The other day they were doing forceful conscription into the army, courtesy of the war with Ukraine. So different countries conscript young people into the military for different reasons. Of course, in Kenya, we had the NYS system, which over time was phased out. And now it's not necessary, it's voluntary if you want to join that. But I would say that there is a level of discipline that comes with joining some of these institutions. That is why they are called the disciplined forces. And as a country, I do not know why we do not emulate, our brothers and sisters in the disciplined forces. I don't know why we do not, refer to them as our role models. Because, truth be told, it might be difficult for us to go back to the NYS system or to forcefully, recruit young people into the army, unless, of course, circumstances conspire such that we might need an extra hand.
Out of necessity.
Out of necessity, correct. But for a long time, Fred, when you look at our military, and we have a very good history, especially in terms of peacekeeping. we have been at the forefront in deploying, and you know, for a long time, even when people were conscripted into the military, it was, so to speak, seen as a very good career where you could advance through the ranks without necessarily putting your boots on the ground, except for peacekeeping missions and so forth. But now times and seasons have changed. Ogolla came at a time when, you know, he was unexperienced in counterinsurgency. You know, he came at a time when now we are having terrorism-related activities. You know, we have boots on the ground in many different countries. And so this is, he's come at a time when, you know, times have changed. And now being conscripted into the military, you really know you're going to work, and it leaves now to the expectation that you must actually serve your country. So
are you saying younger people are not really interested in appointments to places where actual work will be required?
You know, because of the role modeling, young people now prefer places where you can sit back, relax, and enjoy others working. But you know, times have changed. Unfortunately, that is not you know, it might look illustrious in TVs and in other places, but that's not really how it works. You have to put in the hard work now. You remember our military officers are in Boni, Somalia. You know, even as a general and the rest of his entourage passed on, they were going on issues of security. And so it tells you that there is a lot now that young people, especially those joining the military, there is a lot of work to be done, and not just the military, because the operation is multi-agency. So of course you have different also units of the police down there in parts of Baringo, in parts of Turkana, and in Elgeyo Marakwet, where they were living, which was the last place they were living. So yes, there is a lot of work to be done. People moving into the military now must know that it's about serving the country, like the late general has done. He has led the path. Now it's very clear on what you must do. And then again, there's the issue of, as you talk, the younger people are keen on getting the accolades, getting the applause. And you look at this situation, were it not for this tragic incident yesterday with the helicopter crash, there would be no mention of the Chief of Defense Forces being in that area at all. If I told you to the police IG or the CS for Interior, then it would be all over media with press statements. But the work in the military is rarely talked about. It's rarely, they rarely blow their own trumpets. He was there on the ground, and were it not for the accident, there would be no mention of the fact that he was actually on duty. That alone in itself could be a deterrent to the kind of younger people we see now, because if at all a young Kenyan would be there, the first instance is to take a selfie and say, I was here, and I'm actually on the ground changing lives for you. Yeah. You know, a precedence in terms of service has already been there. You remember during the graduation, I think it was 2 years or 3 years ago, of the General Service Unit, there are some young men who graduated and they were taking selfies. An extension of the police, not necessarily the military. No, not the military, the extension of the police. And you know, later the young men were deployed to areas where unfortunately we lost them because of the areas of operation that they were deployed to. And therefore it tells you, when you join this service, the disciplined forces, as I said, it's about serving the country. Without necessarily getting any applause. Actually, chances of getting the applause are very minimal. This must be a selfless endeavor. Remember, Fred, when you look at the accidents that have happened in the military, this is actually the 5th one. And the reason perhaps this has gained a lot of prominence is for the fact that General was there, you know, the CDF was there. But the truth and reality is, on the ground, many accidents have happened. We have lost many lives, courtesy of the wars that our military is engaged in to defend, you know, the borders of the country, as they have sworn to do. And therefore, any person wanting to join not just the military but the disciplined forces, including the police that we have, they must realize that General Ogolla has set precedents, that you can have 60 years of an illustrious career of service to the Kenyan people. And I think it must be very clear to any young person that once you join, one, there is no expectation of accolades. In fact, it's what sometimes those who join Christianity say, you know, you're suffering for the cause. You must realize that your parents, your fellow countrymen might cry when you pass on, but at the same time, we are proud that you diligently served your motherland. I think for me, the greatest honor, and you know, as one of your reporters was saying, you know, you are not a man until you join the military. And so the greatest honor is to become a man in that context and to serve your fellow countrymen, knowing that you took a bullet or two, knowing that even whatever accident that happened, it happened in the line of duty of serving your motherland. I think that should be the highest calling that any Kenyan can engage in.
Yes. And looking at the profile of this gentleman, Francis Ogolla, and the kind of even qualifications he had, and even the place of education is not lost on us. And I'm just looking for that list of academic qualifications he had. He had a degree in political science. And yes, he graduated from the École Militaire de Paris, the National Defense College of Kenya. He held a diploma in international studies and military science from Egerton University, a Bachelor of Arts degree in political science, armed conflict and peace studies, and also a Master of Arts in International Studies from the University of Nairobi. Meaning that even him, and despite the experience, 40 years of experience in the military, he still had room for education. We are at a time when younger people are feeling, hii masomo haisaidii sana, I can just go and excel elsewhere. But success does not just come that easily.
Let me say first and foremost that I am very proud that I went to Egerton University myself, where General Francis Ogolla also, you know, we are both alma mater from the same institution. And you can tell from the caliber that has been molded in General Ogolla, it's good caliber. It tells me also as a young person that most likely I am headed in the correct direction, following the footsteps of the general. When you look at his career in terms of education, for a man born at his time in Siaya, moving all the way to university, the National Defense College, Egerton University, you know, having a master's from the University of Nairobi, is something to be grateful for and to emulate. From General Tonje, when you look at the careers of the generals that have followed, being General Kibwana, Kianga, Karangi, Mwadhadhe, Kiboshi, when you look at their careers and in terms of even education, you can tell that these are men who had foresight. And they realized that for you to have a modern military and for you to have a modern institution, because you know, times keep on metamorphosizing, and therefore the military must also keep changing in the way they deal with several issues. You know, for instance, right now we have several terrorist groups which use all manner of ways and methods. And you know, the military must keep evolving with time. Now, if then you do not evolve academic-wise, in terms of study, in terms of finding out what are the best practices in terms of military, in terms of exchange of ideas, you know. He did not just school in Kenya, he schooled in other jurisdictions, exchanging information. It sort of sets a clear path on how one should grow in their career. And not just from an academic perspective, but also from, you know, career in terms of doing the day-to-day job perspective.
Allow me to engage Professor Macharia Munene, who joins us by way of phone. Macharia Munene is an expert on international relations and also a lecturer of note. Professor Macharia Munene, a very good morning to you, and I'll allow you to commiserate with Kenyans and the families for the loss we suffered yesterday. Go ahead.
Well, it was a shock when we heard what had happened, and to General Ogolla and the other officers that he was with. is a tragedy for the country. We're not even talking about individuals. The country itself has suffered a lot. As for General Ogolla, he was an outstanding Air Force man. He very amiable fellow. I knew him as a person because he was a participant at the National Defense College, and he started in a few other places. So I knew him as a person. He was a very dedicated officer and upright there. So it's a tragic development in the country. We hope we won't have any more of those sort of things.
Okay, thank you so much, Professor Munene, Macharia Munene. And I'll request you to hold on phone for a while, even as we take a break. You're watching Morning Cafe as we continue with the special coverage following the death of Chief of Defense Forces of Kenya, General Ogolla, and 9 others in that fateful helicopter crash yesterday. We'll be back with a lot more.
Promoting insurance awareness with Insurance Regulatory Authority. It is any parent's joy to know that their child's education in future is secured. Education costs are increasingly expensive, while the future is filled with uncertainties. Take an education insurance policy today to assure your child's education in future in case of death or permanent disability. Your education policy remains valid. No further premiums are payable, and your child's education is assured. Read and understand the terms and conditions of your policy. This message is brought to you by IRA. Introducing the whole new TV47.digital, a brand new way to immersive experience to news and entertainment. Enjoy uninterrupted live streaming of your favorite programs on TV47 and Radio 47 on the go with our new mobile-friendly website.
On TV47, we continue with this special coverage following the death of Chief of Defense Forces Francis Ogolla and 9 others. Yesterday, the CDF perished in a fateful helicopter crash at the border of Elgeyo Marakwet and West Pokot County. We still have Professor Macharia Munene on phone. And Professor, you're a professor of history and international relations. So we've seen that Kenya has had heads of military, about 11 of them so far. The earlier ones, probably the very first 3, have already transitioned. They passed on earlier. But this is the very first time that we are having a sitting Chief of Defense Forces dying in office. We've seen also the kind of state funerals accorded to retired president, and the only sitting president who died in office was Jomo Kenyatta. Do you feel that this time round, even through the next 3 days of national mourning and the next 1 week, that we are about to witness something that this country is yet to witness before? Do we still have Professor Munene on phone?
Yes.
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, and we note some difference. The earlier people who became heads of the military.
Professor Mourning, my question was that this is the very first time we're witnessing a sitting head of the military dying in office. Over the last 2 years or so, yes, Kenyans have witnessed the state funerals of retired presidents. And the last time we had a sitting high-ranking officer and a commander-in-chief of the military was in 1978. With your knowledge and understanding of history, are you kindly paint for us the picture of what we're about to see? Are we looking at a situation that where in the next 3 days or the next 1 week we are about to witness something in terms of the preparations that we have never witnessed before?
Well, we've never witnessed this sort of thing before, where a top military officer dies in office. So there are military procedures that will be followed, the honor that goes with it. Of course, all the flags, as the president said yesterday, will be lowered. At least no military installations. They will remain half-mast for some time. Mm-hmm. So they have their own internal procedures of honoring the fallen heroes, especially if they are the top people. The procedure is not outlined in the Constitution. The death of a president is a different matter, because that one, we call it a state funeral, with all the procedures that go along with it. As the head of the military and other top officers, they have their own procedures within the establishment. So that we expect that to be followed, to come out in the public, so the public will have to witness military precision and all those things. And after all, when there is a state funeral, the military are the ones who will conduct it. So now how they will conduct one of their own is something for the public to watch.
Okay. And a very last question for Professor Mourning on matters international relations, because we've seen the death of General Ogolla has actually been received with a lot of magnitude, even in our neighboring countries like Uganda. It's on the front page of the Daily Monitor. Half the page of a newspaper in Kampala, Uganda this morning has the image of General Ogolla. We've also seen the same in papers this morning in Tanzania. And just what is the role of the military, especially when it comes to international relations, that even neighboring countries do recognize this loss?
Well, the General Ogolla is well known. Many of the people running their militaries in different countries within the region, they know him because they've studied together, they've been together, they interact and they cooperate and consult regularly. In fact, one of the key points about participating in the National Defense College is the interaction of various military in the neighboring countries, so they know each other. When there is an issue, they cooperate before they go haywire. They consult each other what's going on, and that was the purpose of General Tonje coming up with all these things. That various people consult and make policy from an informed position. So it is not a surprise that their neighboring have taken it very seriously, because they know each other. They know this man. They know what he can and cannot do. So the military, your question of their role in international relations, to secure the security of their particular countries. But in doing so, they do it from an informed and intelligent position, proper policy, not knee-jerk reactions. It's well thought. And so they know each other. And if the military is weak in a particular country, if it is not properly catered for, and that's part of the purpose of the Chief of General Staff, to make sure that his people are well catered for, then that country cannot conduct any foreign policy effectively, because the others will know they are weak and therefore can mistreat them. So the strength of the military, and the strength is not just hardware, it is also intellectual and moral and economic. When those things are taken care of, then the country is in a position to discuss with other countries on the way forward without being intimidated. So the military helps to keep the country straight, strong, and not intimidated, unless the policymakers are themselves confused. It sometimes happens.
Okay. Thank you so much, Professor Macharia Munene, Professor of History and International Relations, for your sentiments on our ongoing discussion. Let's now move to more views. We do have Enoch Makanga, National Chairperson, Protective and Safety Association of Kenya, joining us by way of Zoom. Very good morning to you, Enoch. And I'll allow you, first of all, to commiserate with the rest of Kenyans following the death of General Francis Ogolla. Go ahead.
Thank you so much. I want to join the other Kenyans in mourning the wonderful officer.
Do you have Enoch Makanga?
An officer who did a wonderful job. I'm joining you from Webuye. General was one of the modern officers that we've had in the military system. And we just want to say pole to the military, to the family, and the whole Kenya as a whole. At the same time, also the other officers who lost their lives while in the same chopper with the general. And we just hope that the God strengthens the family, strengthens the military, because this is the first time we've had such a tragedy in the nation. And we are shocked. Everybody is shocked. When we got the news, we thought it's jokes, but everybody is shocked. We just hope that we get to know what happened, because losing such a wonderful team, plus the general, I mean, the country has just lost it. Thank you.
Yes, Bwana Enoch, we've just been discussing here with Eric Mungai the fact that many of the activities that the Chief of Defense Forces undertook were never publicized, yet, and we noted that if at all it wasn't for the accident that happened yesterday, many would not even have known of his presence in that area, which is considered disturbed. And just paint for us a picture of how important the military or the KDF or the CDF's position in the security of this nation.
Yeah, my background is CID. I'm a former police officer, and what I know is that there are a lot of things that happen that the police and the military do not advertise. They are involved seriously in serious national issues, security issues, that they don't keep on talking about them because of the nature of the activity they're involved in. For example, what the general was doing, I think this is an issue that even Kenyans are shocked that he was on the ground. Most people, him being an Air Force person, most people could say, wait a minute, General has got service commanders who are engineers, who are, this who could be able to undertake that. But now this general took upon himself to go on the ground and see what's happening. Now this goes to what we talk about corporate governance. You go and find what's happening on the ground as opposed to being told this is happening, then eventually you find that nothing is happening on the ground. So I think what I can say is that the officer has died in line of his duty, and he's done a very good, they've done a very good thing, because one of the problems that we've had in the areas that are having problems is the issue of connectivity, the issue of them having activities happening, economic activities happening there. The schools are not even working, and children don't understand the reason why they should go to school. So with the current life we are leading today, if a child can't go to school and the child knows just cattle rustling as his means of earning money, the way of living, unless we inject the notion that people must go to school and also be connected with the other Kenyans, then that means this area is being left behind. So what the army is doing, in fact, that's what we've been talking. We were in the TV station some few days ago, and we were saying, I think the only way these guys will change the way they do their things, the way they've been clued on cattle wrestling, is children going to school, being taught, no, cattle wrestling is not the way to go. You're going to go to school and be a pilot. You're going to go to school and be an engineer. You're going to go to a school and be a big person in Kenya. So I think what we just saying is that General and his team are doing what they think could be one of the solutions. You know, this area has been left behind just because of these people being glued to cattle wrestling, thinking that when you grow up, you want to be a cattle wrestler. When you grow up, you want to own an AK-47. When you grow up, they are really living the Vasco da Gama way of doing things. They want to do things that used to happen very, very many years ago. And with the general going there, making sure the schools are operational, I think the next thing could be building the roads, making sure that these guys are involved in economic activities. And if that continues to happen in those areas, then we shall have like what happened in Karamoja. Karamoja, I was one of the Kenyans who were tasked by the president of Uganda to be able to assist them in eastern Uganda. And I can tell you for free, and I can tell Kenyans for free, the Karamoja stopped cattle rustling. They are now involved in serious economic activities. And I can tell you the issue of cattle rustling in that area of Karamoja is something of the past. Thank you.
Yes, and finally, and this is an issue that probably should be left until after the mourning period, but it's an issue of security nonetheless. And there's a headline on page 4 of the Standard this morning that talks of the puzzle of 5 helicopter crashes in 12 months. This is perhaps the highest profile death of a military officer or any high-ranking officer in Kenya from such a crash. And if we look at the recent history, where in just 1 year we've had issues related to choppers belonging to the military. We are at a time when the use of helicopters and such aircraft has gone high, even among politicians and business people. This is an issue of concern. As a security analyst, what do you say to that?
Yeah, I also got concerned about it because, you know, the general must be flown in the best VIP chopper. The general must be flown by the best pilot. The general must be accompanied by the best technicians. So, and before the general goes out or any VIP goes out, that chopper or plane must be checked, and it must be confirmed that is up to the task. They can be able to undertake the operation that's supposed to be taken. So, as much as we are mourning, the questions very many Kenyans are asking, or security experts are asking, why this? Why should a chopper come down, either mechanically or any other cause? And why should we have a chopper that could have had a problem be used by a Foster General? I mean, a Foster General is a very big man. I mean, as you said, General is known globally, is known regionally, is known in the whole continent. He has met other generals. So when you talk about a 3-star general, 4-star general, 5-star general, these are people who are known globally as far as military is concerned, because these guys are met in standards, they've met in very many leading colleges in the whole world. So when such a person just dies like that, and we cannot be able to understand what happened, that tells you that we must now revisit our procurement procedures. We must know what went wrong. As much as we want to say the plane went down and we are trying to find out what happened, we must now very keenly examine our procedures as far as procurement are concerned. Maybe we ended up purchasing something that was not up to the task and making us lose a whole 4-star general. I mean, as a country, no way. Something must be done as far as procurement is concerned, because it is not very easy for us to lose such a wonderful, hard-working Kenyans, Kenyans that are hard-working, well-educated, and then they just die like that. I think that one raises so many questions. If at all it had a mechanical problem, then there is a problem that must be examined from a professional perspective.
Thank you so much, Enoch Makanga, National Chairman, Protective and Safety Association of Kenya. Asante sana for your perception on this matter. We're now joined by Mutahi Kahiga, the Governor of Nyeri County, on phone. Very good morning to you, Governor. Thank you so much for sparing time for us and joining us. And let's allow you to commiserate to the rest of Kenyans following the death of General Francis Ogolla and the other 9 officers who perished alongside him yesterday. Go ahead, Governor.
Thank you very, very much this morning. It's indeed, yesterday was a really sad day. I was seated, I think, 3 seats from the president when he received the news. And though he did not tell us, we realized that there was really something tragic that had happened. I think a day earlier, I had met General Francis Ogolla. We were together at the Bombers of Kenya for the wage conference. And I do remember, I think one of it was either the deputy president or Musalia Mudavadi, the honorable, asking the CDF to join a photograph that we were taking. And really, yes, it talks a lot about his demeanor. This was a man who I have met in a number of occasions. He was a professional soldier. He was quiet, with a very, very, always wearing a serious business-like face, but a humble man really, to just speak, because many times when many of us get positions, we tend to act like we have become small gods. But I must say that the general was a 4-star general who really was humble. The few interactions I've had with him were really, really encouraging. He was soft-spoken and very, very focused. But now to say we have lost a really great man. This country has lost a 4-star general, a dedicated soldier, and a man who was focused on the job. We know for the short time that he has been the CDF, the changes that he has brought to the military, and therefore I take this opportunity on my own behalf and on behalf of the people of Nyeri to send our heartfelt condolences to his family, and also to the other 9 gallant soldiers who are with him. Allow me to mention Brigadier Swale Saidi, Colonel Duncan Keitan, Lieutenant Colonel David Sawe, Major George Benson Magondu, Captain Sora Mohammed, Captain Hilary Mitali, Senior Sergeant John Kenyo Mureithi, Sergeant Clinfons Omondi, and Sergeant Rose Nyawera. All those are gallant soldiers who have lost their lives in the service of this country. Okay. And in memory, it is my prayer that the people of West Pokot, the Turkana, and the North Rift will really have a second thought about the insecurity that we have in that area. It is important that, and we thank the government of Dr. William Ruto, because if you are aware, the general was going there to inspect development programs, the building of schools, because that is the only way that we will be able to do, unless we do affirmative action in that area and ensure that everybody has an equal chance to go to school so that they can be competitive in the job market, then we'll be able to get rid of the insecurity in that area. Mine is to say we have lost a general, we have lost gallant soldiers. May their souls rest in eternal peace. May God strengthen their family and give them grace sufficient. Thank you very, very much.
Governor, before we let you go, you mentioned that you were at State Lodge Sagana when the president received this news. We are aware that the president was attending the state gala for the schools and colleges National Drama Festival.
Yes.
You said that there was some activity. Kindly paint a picture for us of what happened once the president received this message.
All I will tell you is that as we were seated and we were having lunch, actually, after having watched the performances and made speeches, and he was preparing to attend to another meeting that he had there, one of his aides came, mentioned something in his ears. We saw the president move back. In a few minutes, the deputy president was also called. He left. And then the same person came to me and told me, Governor, you will remain in this tent with the other leaders. Something tragic has happened, and he left. And so we were left speculating. But of course, in a few minutes, the entire social media was full of photos and all that, and there was so much uncertainty. It was a sober mood, and all of us now huddled together in groups trying to find out what was happening. But then later on, the breaking news came, and all of us, our fears were confirmed.
Okay. Thank you so much, Governor. Governor Mutahi Kahiga, Governor of Nyeri County. Thank you so much for sparing time to be with us at TV47, the Morning Cafe, and commissary to the rest of the nation. I'm still in studio with Eric Mungai, and as we wrap up this conversation, a lot will happen in the coming days. And of course, questions are being asked about what happens next to the military. We are yet to see this kind of transition when the Chief of Defense Forces dies in office, and of course someone else has to take charge. And probably the kind of communication that many Kenyans are expecting is instant communication. Yesterday we did not get to see that, even just with the announcement. As you can see, even as Governor says, even at State Lodge at Sagana, the President did not automatically convey the same message to those present. He really took time, and we saw many people complaining that no, you need to inform the country of what is happening, you're taking too long. This thing happened at around 2:30. It was only at 8 p.m. that the President actually confirmed what happened. So it means that even the communication coming in the coming days may not necessarily be that fast.
I agree with you, but sometimes depending on the sensitivity of a matter, there is bound to be delay in communicating to the citizenry. And what I observed yesterday was twofold. One is communication that there was an accident, but then confusion as to who were involved in the accident. And social media was already reporting that General was among the people in the ill-fated helicopter, but you could see that the mainstream media was guarded and waited for the official communication from the presidency. So I believe based on the sensitivity of the matter, there was need for the National Security Council to meet and deliberate on a few issues, you know, in accordance also to the Tonje rules. Ogolla was from the Air Force, so the Navy is poised to take over. But also remember that in the coming days, because the Air Force had not necessarily finished their term, we are yet to see then what will happen with regard to that. But also in terms of communication, someone raised a very important point that, you know, we've had 5 aircrafts that have gone down in the last 1 year military. And I would want to say that it is important, and I think it was a good gesture that a committee was formed from the Air Force to go and investigate the crashes. You might be aware, Fred, that there was a study done some time back on helicopters and aircraft accidents. And of course, when an accident happens, there are many causes: human error, mechanical, many things, poor weather. But what caught my attention is something a psychologist measured using something called the Hofstede Index. And the Hofstede Index measures how people relate, especially with their seniors. And it found out that in countries where there is a lot of reverence to leaders, aircraft accidents are bound to happen, because then the juniors communicate in what is called mitigated speech. So for instance, you know, when you and this is not necessarily for this purpose of these accidents. I say this because even in the 5 or even in the many aircraft accidents we've had, we really don't get a report. But I think it's something also the authorities need to look into, because as your junior, if there is a fault, how do I communicate the fault to you? Am I, you know, if you're my general and I'm your junior, you know, how do I report that given the fact that you're my senior? What are the protocols that are involved? Actually, that was found to be a leading cause of aircraft accidents, because then the juniors would fail to speak out, and then something would go wrong and would go terribly wrong. So I think there is need for us also as citizens, because we are vested in the country, to be knowing what exactly happens, why it happens, and how we can mitigate that in future. The former president launched something that was called NAST. I think it was National Air Support Department, where he moved all government aircraft to be under that department, because he realized that, you know, there were departments that had a lot of technicians, but they had no aircrafts. Then others had aircrafts but did not have technicians. And so they sought to bring them together. But you know, sometimes also when you do that, then there's a procurement challenge based on how timely you procure things and things like that. I think there is need for an independent investigation and overhaul of how we treat, because this is not the first high-profile cases we've had of aircraft, not just helicopters, but even aeroplanes going down and killing not just prominent people, but ordinary Kenyans.
Okay.
So I think there is need for concerted efforts to forestall this in the future, because as I always say, one life lost is many lives lost.
Okay. And as we come to the end of this discussion, yes, I know there's so many questions online, there's so much speculation about what happens next to the military, what happens next to the position of CDF, and who is poised to occupy. And there's also a lot of silence on the same, probably out of respect. It's the 3 days of national mourning. And many people are talking about the succession of CDF Ogolla. But before we get to that discussion, I'm informed that we have Bwana Kipruto Rapkirwa, former cabinet minister for agriculture, joining us by way of phone. Let's talk to him. Good morning, Bwana Kipruto Rapkirwa. Thank you so much for sparing time for us. Karibu sana. This is Morning Cafe. This is Fred Indimuli. And I will allow you to commiserate with the rest of Kenyans following the death of General Francis Ogolla. Go ahead.
Yes, good morning, Fred, and thank you for this opportunity. May I join the rest of my countrymen and women in mourning the passing on of our gallant warriors, including the Chief of Defense Forces, with the late Francis Ogolla. I knew the late Francis Ogolla having shared some studies at the University of Nairobi that led to our MA International Studies, and I knew him as a gallant warrior, somebody well-meaning, somebody disciplined, and somebody who did not assume anybody at any particular time. As we mourn him, let's remind ourselves that what can we do to reduce the menace in the North Rift and make sure that when our soldiers go there in future, they'll be going for other engagements, but not to deal with the issues that have bedeviled our society for the last 60-something years or so.
Yes, and a lot is now said about what happens next to the position of Chief of Defense Forces, who will take over. But we're also aware that we are in an official period of mourning. Probably this information will be delayed out of honor, and probably a lot will be communicated next week. But it is important to note that there is a Vice Chief of Defense Forces, Major General Charles Mureo, actually Lieutenant General, Lieutenant General Charles Mureo Kahariri. In as far as communication is concerned, many people have complained that the communication has been slow, even in the announcement by the President yesterday. But just to allow you, because you have some experience with government workings, we don't expect any quick pronouncements or announcements anytime soon, do we?
Well, I do not know whether that position is allowed to have a vacuum unless Lieutenant General Mureo will be in acting capacity. But what I do know is that yesterday the President took a bit of time because the situation was very fragile. First of all, we do not know that most of the soldiers perished, and those two that were remaining, we thought perhaps General Francis Ogolla could have been one of them. So I'm sure the President was trying to handle a lot of issues and trying to keep the nation informed fully once everything else was established. I do know that that position may not stay vacant for long, because that's one position that is really akin to that of the President in terms of protocol and in terms of also the security of the nation. So I do not know how fast it will be filled, but I'm almost confident that Lieutenant General Mureo may actually be the one to fill that particular position. Although we do not want to do a lot of speculation, but I'm sure the President, in his wisdom, and the rest of the teams advising him will be able to give him a befitting advice that will assist to make sure that we steer the nation away from any form of instability.
Okay, and final question before we allow you to go, Bonakirwa, is this is the very first time that as a country we're witnessing the death of a sitting chief of defense forces. The only time we've come close to this was probably 1978 when the president died while in office. And probably paint for us a picture of what we may expect generally in the coming few days.
Well, apart from the 3 days of mourning, I do expect that all, of course, preparations will be done at the national level, and I'm sure the funeral is going to be a national, will be at the national level, and all protocol that is required of national or state funeral will be entered. And I'm sure the military, of course, they have their own tradition. But remember, even the tradition of state mourning and state funerals that have been held in the past, it is the military which has been leading. So I'm sure, as you've said, since independence, actually we have lost only 2 generals, even after office. But this is the first one we are losing in office. And it is unfortunate that we had to lose such a young person whose talent was going to be useful to this country, even beyond retirement.
Thank you so much, Kipruto Rapkirwa, former Cabinet Minister for Agriculture, for sparing your time to talk to us at TV47. Well, you're still watching Morning Cafe as we continue with the coverage of the death of Chief of Defense Forces Francis Omondi Ogolla and 9 others who perished in that fateful helicopter crash yesterday. We're now taking a break. We'll be back with more. Welcome back. You're still watching Morning Cafe here at TV47. We continue with our special coverage of the first of 3 days of national mourning following the death of the Chief of Defense Forces, Francis Ogolla, and 9 other military officers in that fateful helicopter crash yesterday afternoon. We've been sampling some of the views of mainly leaders on this issue, and would now like to give an opportunity to members of the general public to do the same. And we'll do that in Naivasha, where I'm now joined by my colleague, Willie Dennis Njiru, who will be sampling some of the views of the residents of Naivasha. Very good morning to you, Willie Dennis. Kindly help us get the views of the residents of Naivasha with regard to this sad moment.
Thank you very much, Fred. Indeed, it's a sad moment for the Republic of Kenya, have lost one of its top generals yesterday in a fatal crash somewhere in this Rift Valley. It is sad news that was widespread in the international arena, and we have also the locals here who are going to be sharing their moments and grief to what happened actually yesterday, and we pass our condolences to the family that has been left behind. And without taking much time, I have a gentleman here. Nieleze jina lako na una yapi ya kusema kuhusiana na tukio la jana na rambirambi zako?
Mimi naitwa Njogona Kiarie. Mimi ni mkaaji wa hapa Naivasha. Kwanza natuma rambirambi zangu kwa jamaa na marafiki wa Ogolla. Na kwa Kenya kwa ujumla tumepoteza shujaa. Ya kwanza, hata kama tumepoteza shujaa, Kenya inastahili kuangalia mambo tofauti. Ya kwanza, ukiangalia security ya huyo jamaa inafaa kuwa ya rank ya president. Kwa maana nchi ikiweza enda vibaya, yeye ndiye atachukua ushukani. Ya pili, hizo ndege zote zinafaa kuchunguzwa. Zingine ni za 1970 what. Na ndizo saa hizi zinabeba rais wa taifa la Kenya. Je, tukijiuliza kama ni rais alikuwa kwa hiyo ndege, ingekuwa kesi gani sasa? Ingekuwa hata wazi zaidi. Ya pili, Ogolla alikuwa na watu wengine kwa hiyo ndege. Hata wao ni wa muhimu. Tuliona jana news inaletwa hadi saa 5 ya mtu mmoja ya Ogolla, alafu tunaambiwa others. Hata wao ni muhimu. Tunafaa kuwaomboleza hadi wao, si mtu mmoja tu. Hata jamaa na marafiki wao walipoteza mtu. Hata Kenya kwa jumla ilipoteza watu, lakini hatuwezi sema Ogolla and 9 others. Hiyo hapana.
Huenda alikuwa amesafiri na viongozi walio wa karibu sana kwenye ranks zake, na kwa sababu huenda wametuacha, labda pengine kutakuwa na ugumu wa labda kikosi cha KDF na taratibu zao kuweza kumteua mtu mwingine. Labda unaweza sema nini kuhusiana na hilo?
Mimi pangu naona ni ungumu zaidi, lakini hata ukiangalia hawakuwa sawa vile ati walikuwa kwa rank moja, hawakuwa kwa rank moja. Hao 9 others hawakuwa kwa rank moja na Ogolla. Yeah.
Asante sana.
Kwa hivyo kuna wengine watateuliwa. Yeah.
Ndugu, karibia hapa unieleze lisara za rambirambi, alafu tueleze una yapi ya kusema kuhusiana na tukio la jana.
Kwanza majina yangu naitwa Patrick, na mimi ni mkaaji hapa Naivasha. Napenda kutoa rambirambi zangu kwa nchi kwa jumla na familia ya ambao walituacha. Niseme poreni sana, na pia ningependa kuambia Wakenya hii ni accident kama accident zingine zenye wanga zinafanyika. We should not point fingers to anyone. Pilot hangekuwa anakusudia kuangusha ndege ili auwe maisha ya watu. Kwa hivyo ningependa kuuliza Kenyans tuchukulie hii ni ajali ya kawaida, na wengine wote ambao wameguzwa, mimi napenda kuwapea pole, naomba Mungu awafariji.
Mwenzako aliyetangulia kuzungumza ameongea kuhusu masuala muhimu sana, usalama wa baadhi ya viongozi hao ambao ni tajika na wenye haiba ya juu na wanafaa kuangaliwa hali ya kiusalama hata wanaposafiri. Amezungumzia kuhusu labda zile ndege ni za zamani. Ni kitu gani labda ukiwa mkazi unaweza kuwa unaangalia kiweze kuwa kinazingatiwa?
Mimi Kenya naweza sema ni kwamba kama ndege imekuwa, kuna ile time ambao tunaambianga, hata sisi wenye magari tunaambiwa kwamba hii gari ni unloadworthy. Pia serikali inafaa kuangalia zile ndege, kwa sababu kuruhusu mtu mmoja kama General Ogolla ni hasara kubwa sana kwa taifa letu. Kwa hivyo mimi ningependa kusema serikali, hata mkiangalia barabara zetu, pia muangalie mandege ambazo viongozi wetu wanasafiria, na pia Wakenya wenzetu ambao wanasafiri na hizo mandege. Tusipeleke tu macho yote kwa barabara kwa sababu magari sijui nini. Pia mandege na zile mareli ambazo zinabeba watu ni vizuri pia kuziangalia. Kama ziko unloadworthy, ziondolewe, serikali inunue ndege zingine ili kila mtu akuwe safe. Kwa sababu hata kama mimi sisafiri na ndege, maybe kazini yangu ama anko yangu wanasafiri na ndege. Kwa hivyo ajali kama hiyo ina spread kwa watu wengi sana. Kwa hivyo tungependa tuangalilie hao maneno, na ninajua tutaendelea vizuri. Thank you.
Shukuru sana kwa muda wako. Fred, there you had it from the locals here in Naivasha expressing their concern in regard to the safety of these military choppers that actually carry our elite citizens here, that is including the president and the cadre of the militaries there as you have seen it. And Makiu, these military choppers are the ones that traverse leaders who access these places, and those who actually visit Naivasha, they all carry to come and see how the exploration goes on. Actually, they use these military choppers to get around here. And as you have heard there, the concern is they have to have a checker, and if they have outlived their time, it should be time that we should be having another set of these planes. That is it from me here in Naivasha. My colleague Indimoli in our studios in the capital city. I take it over back to you.
Thank you so much, my colleague Willis Dennis Njeru, for helping us sample some of the views from residents of Naivasha with regard to what we're discussing here. And I'm taking cue from one of the people in Naivasha who said, yes, it is important to recognize all the 10 individuals who perished in that fateful helicopter crash, the 9 who died alongside the Chief of Defense Forces, Francis Ogolla. And allow me to go through the list once more. Brigadier Swale Saidi, Colonel Duncan Keitani, Lieutenant Colonel David Sawe, Major George Benson Magondu, Captain Sora Mohammed, Captain Hilary Litali, Senior Sergeant John Kinyo Mureithi, Sergeant Cliffons Omondi, and Sergeant Rose Nyawira. I'm informed that we do have Honorable Sankok online, but just before that, a quick piece of news regarding to some of these departed military officers, 2 of them who professed the Muslim faith. They're being processed for burial today, and they are Brigadier Swale Saidi and Captain Sora Mohammed. The parents to Swale Mohammed, as well as his siblings, as well as a family of Sora Mohammed, they are currently in the final process of conducting burial for their kin. And the body of Sora Mohammed will be flown to Helu area, which is about 4 kilometers from Moyale town today. Meanwhile, the body of Swale Saidi will be flown to Mombasa this morning for eventual burial. Those rites will be conducted today in accordance with the Muslim faith, and we'll keep on updating you of what is happening. Allow me now to talk to Ole Sankok, MP, East Africa Legislative Assembly. A very good morning to you, Bwana Sankok, and thank you so much for joining us via a phone. Kindly will allow you to give your message of condolences to the nation following the death of General Francis Ogolla and the 9 military officers. Go ahead.
I think there's nothing good about the morning because it is the saddest day in the Kenyan history. Losing such top-ranking military officers, and I think the first time to lose a CDF, a sitting CDF who is in office, it is a sad day in Kenya. And losing top military officers within our borders when they are trying to maintain peace that ordinarily would have been maintained by normal police officers. It's a sad day, and I think investigation should be done so that we ascertain what really caused their death. But I wish to convey my own heartfelt condolences on my own behalf, on behalf of my family, on behalf of the East African Legislative Assembly, to the families of the departed soldiers. I want to assure them that we are, as the East African Economic Bloc, together with Kenya and together with the Commander-in-Chief of all Kenyan Armed Forces, in mourning such top-ranking officers. And again, soldiers never really die. They rest. And soldiers never retire. And if they retire, they don't die. And if they die, they don't rot. And if they don't rot, they don't smell. And if they smell rose flower. May their soul rest in eternal peace.
Okay, and Bwana Ole Sankok, speaking from a regional perspective, we've seen the kind of reception that this news has received from our neighboring countries. It is on the front page of the Daily Monitor in Kampala and on the front pages of the Citizen and the Mwananchi. Those are dailies in Tanzania this morning. It would appear that, yes, the region has taken cognizance of what is happening in Kenya. As a member of the East Africa Legislative Assembly, this is something that that affects not just Kenya, but our neighbors as well.
Yes, because, you know, Kenya has been beacon of peace in the whole of the region. And again, we have had our officers maintaining peace and in peace missions within Africa and especially within East Africa. We had our officers in DRC. We have had our officers in the Federal Republic of Somalia. So as East Africa community, the 8 member states are shocked, and we mourn together with our Kenyan colleagues because these affect the whole region. And the CDF, Ogolla, have been instrumental in maintaining peace in the region with these officers. So as East African Economic Bloc, the 8 countries, we really mourn with them. And we mourn with Kenyans. And it is a shock to all of us. No wonder it is in top, in front pages of dailies in most of the East African countries, but not in front pages of dailies, but it is in the heart of all East African citizens, the 350 million East African community citizens. We are really shocked, and I think we pray that may God give solace to Kenyans and to the Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces and to the families of the departed soldiers.
David Ole Sankok, thank you so much for your time with us. David Ole Sankok is an MP in the East Africa Legislative Assembly. Thank you so much for your time talking to us at Tier 47. Still in studio with Eric Mungai. Just a brief mention of what is expected to happen today. Even as we continue with the days of official mourning, at least 2 of those individuals or military officers who perished in that fateful chopper crash yesterday, their final rites will be carried out today in accordance with the Muslim faith. They are Brigadier Swaleh Saidi and Captain Sora Mohammed. The body of Captain Sora Mohammed will be flown to Helu, which is about 4 kilometers from Moyale, for the final rites, while Brigadier Swaleh Saidi, the body will be flown to Mombasa this morning for the final rites. Bwana Mungai, we were talking about transition, and we were talking about the questions that are there and the slowness, or rather taking time to communicate this. Even as people anticipate what's going to happen with the position of CDF, there's the Vice Chief of Defense Forces who's already in office, and that is Lieutenant General Charles Kahariri. And of course he has taken charge, and he was also appointed the same time. He was a Major General appointed Lieutenant General at the same time that CDF Ogolla was appointed as a CDF. We do not expect this communication to happen at this time during mourning. Even if it has happened probably behind the scenes, Kenyans should be a bit patient.
You know, in an African, let me first say that nature abhors vacuum. You cannot have vacuum for long. But secondly is to say that from an African context, it's bad manners to talk about succession. Sometimes when, you know, the family is still going through mourning, the country is still reeling in shock. So it appears, you know, bad manners when you're envisaging what might happen. But the reality of life is that life tends to move on. And the reality is, one, for the first time we have a CDF who dies in office. So as a country, we find ourselves in a situation where we haven't been before. But even so, we are a country that is governed by the rule of law. And one thing I want to appreciate is that even when we tend to disagree politically, when it comes to institutions, we more or less tend to follow through. And you've said it correctly. Right now is the time of the Navy to take over in accordance to the Tonje rules.
But that communication can only be given to us by the Commander-in-Chief.
By the Commander-in-Chief. Actually, according to the KDF Act, it's the prerogative of the Commander-in-Chief, who is the President, to appoint not just the CDF, but also the Vice, and I think 3 servicemen. They serve for a term of 4 years, or a retirement age of 62, whichever comes first. So like for the late General Ogolla, he could not serve for 4 years because then he would have attained the mandatory retirement age of 62. And so since now his term, actually, so to speak, the term of the Air Force has not come to an end, I do not know what will happen. But let me say, it's a good space to be in as a country where we test our systems and where we develop precedents as we move along, but most importantly, where we peacefully do it and where we have a consensus as a country that there is need for us to move forward in one accord, in one piece, and knowing that, you know, it's a first time this is happening. So even getting in future, we have sort of some precedents which has been said, because remember, we've had a vice president die in office, the late Kijano Amalwa. We had a state funeral. We know how that goes. And I'm not saying that people should die in office so that we get precedents, but in the unlikely event that such instances happen, they also develop systems and cultures of how we move forward. But I would tell Kenyans that we are in safe hands, because remember, even when we buried the late President Mwai Kibaki, the late President Moi, it's the military that took over in terms of planning for the funerals. And therefore, I believe that they will have a befitting honor and a befitting send-off to their general. They are not known to miss the mark. They are very orderly, very meticulous in the way they do things. And for us Kenyans is to join hands with them. You know, the least we can do as Kenyans is to, one, support their families, because remember, the families of servicemen in reality donate their kinsmen to us as a country for free. Mm-hmm. You know, they donate their time, they donate their resources. This is a husband who most of the time is not home. This is a wife who is not home. And so the least thing we can do as Kenyans is to offer support to them, is to commiserate in the best way that we can, is to turn up in large numbers and comfort the families of the soldiers that have died over and above the general. So I think as Kenyans, we now have a responsibility to show our gallant servicemen that what they do for us is important. It's a requirement, it's a service that we cannot really pay back, but we will stand in the gap and space and mourn with them.
Thank you so much, Eric Mongai, political analyst. But just before we finish this conversation, we'll take one more call. Gigi Kagombe, MP Gatundu South, is on a phone with us. A very good, well, it's not a very good morning. The nation is in mourning. Bwana Kagombe, asante sana for giving us time right here on TV 47. We'll allow you time to commiserate with the rest of Kenya following the death of Francis Ogolla, a CDF, as well as the other military officers. Go ahead.
Thank you very much. It's a very sad morning. To be mourning the death of the CDF, the first time it has happened for a CDF to die in office. And I think what is most important is to allow the families of or rather the grieving families, to have some time without a lot of, I'm seeing a lot of, imaginations and things going on social media. And at times, we are in an age where we are lacking or losing our social fiber because of probably the communication age. So at times people get very insensitive. I've seen very insensitive comments, and we take into our hands decisions to, guess what could be happening. There's so many theories going on. I've seen some people bringing some very discordant messages about tribalism and succession in KDF. I would just wish that we would allow the families of those people time to grieve. And at times, we have families other than the families of the CDF himself. We have so many other people who've lost their family members. And as I had Eric say before me, is that these are families that have donated their people to the country. So these are families that have really given sacrifice over time. So it is important that we give them time to mourn during this very difficult time. I also want to say it is unprecedented, and therefore a lot of people all of us did not know how to deal with it. Although there isn't one time when death becomes easy, there isn't any easy death, because you never have the experience of losing that particular person. So it is not easy at any time. But I would wish, just like you saw the security committee do yesterday, that they just allow time for people to mourn as we find out exactly what is happening. The Air Force is already investigating the issue, and I know they will give us an answer in due course. So for now, I just wish we could allow the family and the nation as a whole to mourn as we look forward to the changes. And I know it's a difficult time. We had just change of guard about a month or a few weeks ago. The vice CDF had retired, and we had another one we had Kahariri now taking over. As you may also understand, we are looking at the age of Kahariri and wondering what will happen after that. So we have a lot of things that we need to allow the powers or the people who are charged with that responsibility to deal with as we mourn in the country. That is what I would say for now.
Okay, thank you so much, Gigi Kagombe, MP Gatundu South, for your time talking to us here at TV47, and also commiserating with the rest of the nation following the death of CDF, that's the Chief of Defense Forces of this Republic, Francis Omondi Ogolla, as well as the 9 military officers whose names are as follows: Brigadier Swale Saidi, Colonel Duncan Keitani, Lieutenant Colonel David Sawe, Major George Benson Kagondu, Captain Sora Mohammed, Captain Hilary Litali, Senior Sergeant John Kenywa Mureithi, Sergeant Clearphons Omondi, and Sergeant Rose Nyawera. And the latest news we have with regard to what's going to happen next is that 2 of those officers who professed the Muslim faith, their final rites will be conducted later today. And these are Brigadier Swale Saidi, whose body will be flown to Mombasa this morning for the final rites, and Captain Sora Mohammed, whose body will be flown to Helu area, which is about 4 kilometers from Moyale town, for final rites. Their final rites will be conducted today in accordance with the Muslim faith. Allow me to thank all the people who have contributed to this show this morning, beginning with the last caller, Gigi Kagombe, MP Gatundu South, David Ole Sankok, MP East Africa Legislative Assembly, Mutahi Kahiga, Mutahi Kahiga, the Governor of Nyeri County, Enoch Makanga, National Chairperson, Protective and Safety Association Kenya, Professor Macharia Monene, who's a History and International Relations Lecturer, Farah Maalim, MP Dadaab, and of course, Eric Mungai, political analyst, who's been with us throughout here in studio. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Fred, and also wish quick recovery to the soldier who is still in hospital, Frankfurt Karanja.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
And we'll continue updating you on the latest news as we continue with the 3 days of national mourning. Remember, all flags beginning today and for the next 3 days fly at half